Hi everyone, this is another video just like the title says. This will be my impressions of the CustomArt series of custom in-ear monitors. And so CustomArt is a company based in Poland, so I firstly want to thank Barra on Head 5 for arranging this tour within the United States. And I want to thank Peter himself at CustomArt for making this tour even possible by providing the custom in-ear monitors. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. So just a heads up for all of these units. These are all universal fit custom in-ear monitors. So they're molded to shape people's ears, and they have a stem here that you can put your universal ear tips on. So this is not actually what the custom in-ear monitor will look like. Each of these has a little bit of a different design, and that was just to showcase the different finishes that CustomArt can put on a custom in-ear monitor. So your Music One, for example, won't look like this one, but you can customize it to the way that you want. So without further ado, let's get on with how they sound. So I think CustomArt really nailed the sound with the Music One. They're probably my favorite of the three that I have in this lineup right now, and the reason for that is because the sound signature really suits my preferences. I enjoyed the AKG K701, and I think the mid-range on the Music One is very similar to that. Kind of has a more the mid-range as a whole is just very easy to follow, and I think part of that is because there's a 2 kilohertz peak, and because of that it kind of makes the female vocal presence a little better in the music compared to everything else. In terms of the bass, I think the Music One has more bass presence than the AKG K701. It's a little looser sounding, but it's also more present, so it gives a more balanced sound in terms of the mid-range and the bass. Moving on to the treble, I find the treble to be pretty smooth, just like the K701 as well. It has a decent extension, and it has a very kind of natural sound, but I wouldn't say it's very detailed at all. It's kind of a treble that I would say is polite, in that it doesn't really make things sound too harsh, which is what I like in my music in terms of sound preferences. Alright, so moving up the line. Again, these are all different appearances. So here's the Music 2, a very different appearance. This one has a clear shell that you can see, or semi-transparent rather. You can actually see the balanced armatures in here. So the Music 2 has 2 balanced armatures. Oops, let's get that to autofocus. There you go. So there's 2 balanced armatures in there, and it's the Music 2 I think is kind of a more traditional hi-fi kind of sound, where it has more detail, kind of a little wider sound stage, but I find the Music One to have more depth in terms of the sound stage. Just more details as a whole, and the bass present is even greater in the Music 2, which gives the mid-range a little more warmth, so it's good for kind of the male vocals and lower kind of sounds in the mid-range, like guitar notes and kind of the punchy bass hits that you would get in electronic music. And as a whole, I didn't like these as much because the sound signature is a little bit different than the Music One. I find this to have kind of a more U-shaped kind of sound, so it has more bass presence, more treble presence, and personally that's not my thing, but I think if you're kind of your typical average consumer, this might be a sound that you would like. The detail retrieval on this is a lot better than the Music One, and I think part of that is because there's a treble spike at around 9 to 10 kilohertz, and that gives the illusion that you're hearing more details in your music. Personally, I find that peak a little bit overdone, and I find that it gives the upper mid-range kind of a metallic kind of sound. So that's not my personal preference, but I still think these are very good. As you can also see, the cable is a lot different from the Music One, which has a black cable. This Music 2 has kind of a silver cable, and it's kind of coated in plasticky material. So I think the cable looks a lot nicer in the Music 2. And finally, moving on to the third one that I have here. This one is the Pro 330 version 2. And I think the appearance of this one is the most stunning, because this one is a lot more transparent than the Music 2, which was kind of a semi-transparent. This one is just beautiful, I think. Get that to autofocus. So you can clearly see the inside of the shell. And the cool thing about the silicone material is that it's actually filled inside. So unlike an acrylic shell where it'd be hollow except for where the drivers are, you get this very solid build inside of the custom inner monitor itself. Oh, also another thing that I should mention is that on these touring units, the cable is not removable. That was done because it was easier to make a non-removable cable. But when you order a CustomArt custom in-ear monitor, you will actually get a removable cable. So also keep that in mind. But anyway, you can see the circuit board in there. It's pretty obvious where it is. You can see it's pretty thick as well, so I'm guessing it's a multi-layered circuit board. But anyway, onto the sound of these. Personally, I don't really like these at all. I found that they have a treble spike just like the Music 2, but it was even more accentuated, so it sounded more metallic than the Music 2 to me, and that made trebles sound really sibilant like that, and it kind of gave the overall mid-range a metallic tone. Also, I found that there is a kind of upper mid-range spike in the frequency response at around 5 kilohertz that gave violins a kind of honky sound. So if I used the equalizer and tuned that down about 4 decibels, I found that it was much more natural sounding to me for the mid-range at least. And the bass was kind of similar to the Music 2. I would say these are more punchy and they have a tighter bass response than the Music 2, which was nice for me because I found the Music 2's bass to sound a little bit woolly sounding, similar to the Music 1. So those are my brief impressions of the CustomArt custom inner monitors. Again, I would say for my preferences, I really enjoyed the Music 1 the most. I've been using them a lot throughout the past week because I just found the sound signature just to be right on par with what I like for my speakers or headphone setups. So kudos to CustomArt for getting this sound signature nailed on even the most entry-level custom inner monitor. So this actually, let me pull out the website here. I believe the Music 1 is $235 US or 189 euros. So that's a really good entry-level price for a custom inner monitor. So if you're kind of a person who likes a balanced sound with a smooth treble and kind of vocal monitor for music, I think the Music 1 is definitely a good in-ear earphone for that. And I've probably, I think this is probably the only in-ear earphone that I've heard that sounds just like the AKG K701. So I really enjoy that full-size AKG K701, but if I needed a custom inner monitor, I would definitely recommend this one if you like that kind of sound for only a mere $235. So that's really an accomplishment from CustomArt. As for the other two lines, I think the Music 2 is a good step up for the Music series, but I personally didn't like the sound signature as much. I think if you get the music 2, you would most enjoy it with kind of the modern generation of music with pop, R&B, rap. Not so much rock, but I guess you can get a good sound with classic rock with a punchy bass. And yeah. And then for the Pro 330 version 2, these are marketed for the pro users, so I'm not actually a pro musician, so I can't actually say what sound signature they prefer. Maybe they like to have more sparkle in the treble with the 9 to 10 kilohertz peak that makes them be able to hear details within music cues better. So I'm not actually sure what the pro sound is, but for a consumer like myself, I personally didn't like the sound from these as much as I did for the Music 1 or the Music 2. So these were kind of a miss for me, but maybe your preferences are different and you actually like this kind of sound, so that would be a good option as well. But I really, I still can't get enough of how this looks, because this is just awesome, I think. Very cool, transparent shell. Well, that's my impressions of the CustomArt series. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.